As Betty mentioned in her speech, that there are a number of benefits to using recycled materials. Our next panel will take a closer look at social, economic, and environmental benefits. And this panel will be moderated by Terence, Jeyaretnam, a partner at Ernst & Young with a great interest and passion for circular economy outcomes. Please join with me in welcoming Terence to the stage along with his panelists. Terence.
Great. Thank you, Veena. This is one of these mics where they said, you don't have to turn it on. It just comes on when you need it. So I've not sweared or said anything nasty about anyone, just in case. So the panel that we've got today is benefits beyond the use of recycled materials. So the concept is that in a circular economy context, there's additional co-benefits from creating a circular economy or using recycled materials, as Betty just outlined in her talk. Jobs, local economic growth, reduction in pollution, reduction in landfill, less use of virgin materials and so on. So that's the context of today's presentation, and we've got an esteemed panel. So I'll introduce each of you, and Betty's done an introduction of what she's done, but it'd be good to say a little bit about what you do in your day jobs. So we've got Betty, we've got Steve Betinsky, General Manager, Employment Enterprise at Osei Connections with his bollard, recycled. Yasmin Grigaliunas, Founder and Chief Evangelist. I haven't heard that before, so we'd love to know what Chief Evangelist does. Circonomy, and Dr. Joe Pickin, who I've known for 20, 25 years, Director at Blue Environment. So I might start from Joe and come this way.
Okay. Yes, what I do in my day job. So Blue Environment's a small consultancy, 10 or 11 people. We sort of, probably the easiest explanation is we're kind of waste and resource recovery geeks. A lot of numbers, a lot of Microsoft Excel, a lot of modeling, a lot of data, a lot of strategic work, working a lot for governments and also industry.
Steve Betinsky, General Manager of Osei Connections. You may have, if you were in the room earlier, you may have seen the video that was up there. Osei Connections is actually a disability services provider, and so we run a number of job-focused social enterprises and employ people with disability into that. And about 3 years ago, we undertook a transformation and really wanted to find ways to move beyond just providing the social outcomes and look at those triple bottom line outcomes around social, environmental and economic. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the outcomes we've achieved from doing that.
Yasmin?
So I'm Yas, the founder of Circonomy, which is circular economy mashed together as a word. We were formerly known as the world's biggest garage sale and started out 10 years ago thinking we were solving a problem of dormant goods for good. And it's grown into a significantly large Australian social enterprise that's activating dormant goods for good. And I like to say we take surprise chain and turn it into supply chain. And we work with big businesses, retailers, property, insurance, and big organisations who would otherwise send returns and imperfect products to landfill, and Circonomy comes in and provides services and product solutions to ensure that we can re-commerce those assets back into the market. And we do so with employment focuses on neuro-inclusivity.
Great, thank you. I've got some questions here to kick off the discussion, but you've got some QR codes on your tables. So you can scan those and enter questions in Slido, and apparently they will turn up on the massive screens in front of us, and we'll be able to pick those questions up. So fire away if you've got interesting questions. I want to start with, I guess, some of the planetary issues that we're facing and why circular economy is so important, and also go into the question of whether circular economy can save us. So I think news from this month has been that not 3 but 5 of the 7 planetary boundaries have now been breached, which means that we're going beyond the limits of the planet. And I refer back to a 1970 publication by MIT, which then became the Club of Rome book, Limits to Growth, which predicted that by 2040, if we didn't change the way we're doing things, we were going to breach all the boundaries and start to decline as a human society and as a planet. And the modeling done a few years back suggests that we were pretty much on course to doing that. So the 1970 modeling was absolutely right. We were heading that way. The MIT paper talked about not sustainability, but stability. And stability is around getting to a point where you're not consuming any more than you need to, and getting to a point where you're not creating more pollution than what the world can absorb. And that's where circular economy is very important. Technology, the modeling from a couple of years ago suggested that technology wasn't going to get us there. We really need to think about consumption and circular economy. And stability also meant that you needed to move to jobs that were health, education, restoration, and circular economy oriented, not manufacturing and driving more consumption. So that's the sort of context of this session. It's always satisfying when doing the right things brings so many added benefits. Steve, with Osei connections, you've been able to leverage increased use of recycled materials on the Victorian infrastructure, big build. Can you give us some examples of the impact that you've seen through that work?
Yeah, and I think if you've spent any time in the trade hall next door, you'll see multiple examples of fantastic innovation where that's the case. But I'll talk to one that we've brought to market. Pretty much everyone would know what this is, the humble traffic bollard. These are all, well, up until this, which is an Australian first, the ecologiQ T-top bollard, made from virgin plastics, imported from China or Taiwan. They don't have a long lifespan because they live in high impact environments and they end up in holes in the ground. This one typically weighs around about 850 grams. So for 20,000 of those, that's about 17 tonne of virgin plastic that goes into the ground for a very, very short lifespan. And as we know, it just breaks up. It doesn't, dissipate. So that causes its own issues again. So what we did was we identified that the waste could be a resource that could be used into making new traffic bollards, along with other locally sourced sources of plastic, so post-industrial, post-consumer plastic waste, all sourced locally. And so that's what we've done. So we created a circular economy model. So we've moved away from production, consumption, waste, where what we now do is we divert the old bollards from landfill, and that part of the resource recovery model generates work for our people. We then use manufacturing partners to use the recycled plastic inputs to make the OCT bollard. And then from that creates the next bit of work where our guys will then finish the product, which includes adding on the strip. So we launched this product in November of last year, and we've just topped 20,000 bollards out in the marketplace. Now, when those bollards get run over by a truck, which they invariably will, we recycle those as part of our resource recovery model. And to put some numbers around that for you, so I already mentioned, 20,000 of those, that's 17 tonne of virgin plastics that haven't been produced. It takes 1.75 kilos of fossil fuels to produce 1 kilo of that, so do the maths on that. We've created about 6 minutes worth of work for each bollard, so that's over 2,000 hours worth of meaningful ongoing work for people living with disability. And then because we manufacture locally using local manufacturing partners, that's work injecting into the local economy rather than importing from overseas. So we hit those triple bottom lines of environmental, social, and local economic.
Fabulous. So these sort of benefits are also seen beyond infrastructure, and Yasmin with Circonomy. And I remember Ryan from Officeworks had the partnership with Officeworks, and then he thought Circonomy is so good, he was sustainability manager there. He moved there.
He did.
I hope he's going well. Can you talk to some of the examples that you've seen outside the infrastructure space from a social and environmental point of view?
Yeah, it's a good point. So I said yes, like most entrepreneurs do, and the Global Entrepreneurs Congress is actually in this building at the same time. You say yes and you figure it out along the way. And when Officeworks asked me back in 2019 if I could take 40 pallets of stuff that was broken, because they didn't want to waste it. Ryan was their manager at the time over there. I said yes, and I really didn't know what we were going to get, hence surprise chain. Pens, pencils, filing cabinets, tables, desks, everything. And the theory was we could repair it and create jobs. So resource recovery to repair, renew, repurpose, re-commerce. So we said yes. Timing was everything. The event to sell all of that stuff was 2 days before COVID shut the world down. We were very grateful for that. We sold it all, 98% diverted from landfill. So we knew immediately we could work in the retail space. We could take returns, repairs, the things that each one of you probably buy either in-store or online now. It's broken, it's imperfect, it's cracked, and you send it back or you throw it out. Ideally not, but you send it back and the retailer then generally throws it out. And I'm not here to shame retailers, that's just the process. Fast, speedy, get it out, was the old model. We did that pilot for 4 years, and Officeworks actually invested. I'm really open about that. It's public knowledge. Officeworks invested in our company because we turned their waste cost centres into profit centres, and all of a sudden their stores were really passionate about sending us broken chairs because we would fix them and create jobs and meaningful employment. Beyond Officeworks, of course, it's a whole of retail solution. And then bringing on Ryan as my CEO, hence me, the chief evangelist now, we're here to scale the enterprise. And in addition to working in retail, as I said before, a building example is one locally here in Melbourne, actually, 13 floors or 12 or 13 floors. Please don't quote me on the number. A Mirvac building in Collins Street would be a strip out or a defit. Typically, generally, the speed of a defit is get rid of all the chairs, desks, bits and pieces, ceiling tiles, ceiling tiles, carpet tiles. But what Circonomy does is we have a response squad that goes to site, and we have a circular asset management tool that allows us to capture that data and report it back to our partners in property, as an example with Mirvac. And we took those 12 floors, consolidated to 2 floors, so we didn't need to move the stock off site, and we opened Australia's first circular economy showroom, so businesses and consumers could come and purchase those very valuable assets that would otherwise have not really had a place to go. So I guess over the years, 10 years since the concept, 6 years since I quit my job and went all in, it's really about partnerships for the goals. The Sustainable Development Goals have guided our business operating model for many years, but we didn't have all the answers. We started off as a garage sale and grew into Circonomy. The concept was always that we could make a difference and make money and create jobs and be the triple bottom line fantasy business that we envisioned back then. And I guess what we now know is that all industries, all businesses, all areas have stuff. Stuff is not going to go away, and there is no away. And so we've moved from that take, make, waste, a linear economy as an enterprise, and my role as chief evangelist is to ensure that we can tell stories where we have executed, not just the theoretical practice of creating a strategy of hypothetical, but actually being on the ground, getting our hands dirty, and with lived examples that can hopefully inspire you in your organisations to think about different ways of generating a more circular enterprise. And if you don't know how to do it, then businesses like mine are there to help you.
And are there any examples, Yas, in other countries that are similar to yours?
Look, it's really interesting. There are a lot of examples in other countries where people specialise and businesses specialise in specific verticals like furniture or electronics or apparel or insert the other product category here. There's not a lot of, like I always say, and I'm the loose one, right? I'm the founder, so I get away with a bit more than the operational team. But we've always had this desire, hence Circonomy, as a brand we created 5 years ago, that we would be the macro solution. So we would partner with the giants, the Officeworks and the others, who wouldn't want to send their e-waste here, their desks there, their apparel there. Like, it's just too hard. The disparity is harder, and therefore it would be too slow. So founders like me that were like to go super fast wanted to kind of leapfrog up and go, we'll take supply chain. And then it's our business's job to go and do all the underground messy stuff by bringing in the other smaller enterprises who we can then fuel and fund with projects and work opportunities, because we could be that macro solution. Globally, there's not a lot of people out there, Terence, that are doing that macro solution, because it is super hard. But we've had a 10-year journey to learn the hard way. And we partner with so many enterprises, especially in the social space. And we want to ensure that it's a co-opetition model, not competition, and that together we can work with all enterprises to help those that have specialty areas. We can be a supplier to those organisations. And so we have a lot of charities that come and pick and pluck products from us, but we can take that load on, whereas Mirvac are not going to, like, it's so hard for them to let in all the people who, like governance, compliance, insurance, difficulties with everybody trying to come in and take what they want from those floors. When a business like Circonomy can come in and just make that hard stuff easy, then we can get more execution and evolution.
Great. Betty, you talked about a few examples from your work. Any others that spring to mind that you wanted to mention?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you again. Okay, I just wanted to add the fact that in terms of benefits, circular economy is able to direct action to, or attention to, local knowledge. You tend to reduce importation of waste materials and encourage responsible management locally and within. I don't know how many of you here love eating local chicken. How many of you love eating foreign chicken? Which one is nicer? And
no.
so you just...
Neither, in my view. I'm vegan. But.
Okay, local vegetables and foreign vegetables. So it tells you that circular economy has that tendency to boost local knowledge acquiring. Apart from that, to better health, because you find that within those communities that we do recycling, organic composting, you have better crops, organic crops, for these individuals to feed on. Apart from that, you also look at alleviating social disparity. I spoke about informal waste speakers. I don't know how the system here is, but it's really a hell of a one in Africa when it comes to informal waste speakers, giving them that global platforms, encouraging the marginalized to feel included. I'm a young lady, but I'm seated amongst a panel 30 years older than me. It's a platform for me to learn. It's a platform for me to grow. And I feel circular economy is beginning to create the opportunity for us to come together, think together, act locally, think globally, and act globally.
Thank you, Betty. Just moving to Joe. Joe, your companies work closely with state and federal governments, particularly around material flows and waste sort of policy issues. Can you talk to the scale of the challenge that we have, particularly with the recovery target of 80% by 2030? I guess starting from how much we know about material flows and waste data through to the infrastructure challenges that Yas has just talked through, and how we're going to get to 80%
all of
recovery.
That.
All of that in 3 minutes.
Okay, so I can talk about the last National Waste Report released at the end of last year, looking at 2021. So it's a bit old now already. It was a bit old actually when it came out. It takes a while to pull that data together. But that showed a recovery rate overall of the materials that are in scope of about 63%, with the target of 80. And that 63% has barely shifted since the previous two National Waste Reports. A little bit, but not very much. So really, it's telling a story of we're not getting out at the moment. Now, that's if it's linear. Now, of course, it's not linear. And you'd have to say there's a lot more government engagement, the whole China thing, the whole, in Victoria, of course, the big fires and all of that drama. Thank you, Craig. The war on waste and all these things have helped to crank it up. And I should say, another one, I think is really, worked well. And I loved it that you, Betty and Yasmin, you both use the word story. The story of the circular economy. It's a great story. And Terence and me have been doing this for a long time, and we've had lots of words come and go, resource efficiency and cleaner production. Yeah, you know, they kind of didn't capture. But I've heard Barnaby Joyce saying circular economy. And if Barnaby Joyce is saying circular economy, it's something working. And really, in the end, what we've got to get to is something where how it's been for a long time is, you know, stuff enters the waste system, and the waste people go, right, what have we got here then? But there is not very much link with the people who are making the things that generate this waste. Some meager attempts, but circular economy, for the first time, is bringing them to the table. And they are seriously at the table, and we've got a minister who's got a stick with product stewardship and prepared to use it, and has said so. So I think all the ducks are in a row. There's money going into to infrastructure. Yes, there's probably only about 1 million tonnes worth of additional recovery in that infrastructure, because some of it's replacing export processing. Probably got 1 or 2 million tonnes more in FOGO on the horizon. We've got some waste to energy, 1 or 2 million tonnes, but we probably need about 15 across the country. So we're still a long way short. There's a long way to go. Construction and demolition waste is the biggest success story, really, of the 3 streams: municipal, commercial, industrial, construction and demolition. And there's still scope for more, as we know, particularly in the market end. We've got some great processing, great products. So now pushing that stuff, that's probably the biggest hope for where large amounts of material can go into something more productive than a hole in the ground. The worst difficulty, you'd have to say, is commercial and industrial waste and how it expresses itself in the data. I mean, yes, 2021 was COVID years, so it was a bit different, but we basically had a recovery rate in decline for commercial and industrial waste. So there's a lot of work to do there, and that's probably the biggest area of challenge, I'd say.
So you think the 80% is a very ambitious target?
It will be difficult to reach that target, no doubt. No doubt.
And recycling generally, and if you look at plastics, I think the figure, Joe, is something around 9% of all plastic that was ever made's been recycled. So 91% hasn't been. Fossil fuel industries are moving to find other sources of revenue, and plastic production is one of those. So do you anticipate that the additional challenge is that there's going to be more materials that are going to come onto the market in the hard to recycle category? Is that one of the challenges?
Well, it's hard. I mean, we can say the things we like, and we put the programs that we can in as we like to try and make things efficient. But price is a very, very powerful signal. Price is like the tide, and when the price of stuff is going down, it's hard to avoid stuff substituting for labour. I mean, when I was a kid, you used to be able to buy nails by the kilo from the hardware shop. It's not efficient anymore. Nobody's going to do that. It doesn't work. If you tried it, nobody would buy them because you can get them in a packet surrounded by plastic in lumps.
Plastic packet.
Yeah, a plastic packet. So somehow it's going to be hard to stop the tide. We can certainly be more efficient. But yeah, I think we're going to see more plastics coming in the market.
That's a good weave into some of the work that EY's done with the team at the Victorian Big Build, which is around looking at the concept of life cycle sort of analysis with economic impact. And one of the things that we found was that if you can produce higher value recycled goods, it made things a lot easier. So, you know, that price compared to virgin became better. You got more jobs, you got more economic return, better margin. So innovation around how to divert recycled materials or recycling content into higher value products was one that, you know, one of the recommendations that came out of our work. Just going to the concept of waste as a resource, Yas and Steve, you've talked about this as well. Can I get both of your comments, maybe starting with Yas, around the social, environmental, economic benefits that we've touched on, but do you think we'll get better outcomes if we cement the thinking around waste as a resource, and what are some of the challenges in doing that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a tagline like waste nothing, including human potential. I don't love the word waste. We call them resources, goods, assets. They're the sorts of words that we use internally in our business, and it's really important, like the language you use matters. I've been saying to the charity sector, and I don't mean this rudely, but there's tens of millions of dollars spent every year dumping products that are put in charity bins. Well, maybe if we stop calling them charity bins, we'll stop putting the shit in there. Like, that's the reality. We say charity bins, so you get your worst stuff from your house, you feel like you're doing good, and that's how the world's biggest garage sale came about, because we took the goods that were too good for charity, in the words of our customers, and people were too time poor to sell. So it's the dormant goods, $46 billion in this country alone. But for us, it's not about waste. There is no waste. I mean, when we're designing products, we should be designing for disassembly. When we're manufacturing products, we should be thinking about, are we stamping these metals like Polster do, and they stamp their metals, so when you disassemble the car or it crashes, they know exactly the stream of the metal where it should go, because aluminium's valued at higher than other steels. So I think that it's actually at design phase, and if we're designing better with more circular asset consideration, then the materials we have, we don't need to actually mine the ground, we can mine the land, and urban mining can be a thing. When you just look around your house at all the things you're not using, they are materials and resources, not waste. So I think as consumers, like, the buck stops with us. I'm not an activist, I'm an activator. I won't protest, but I will produce. So you won't hear me shame government, because whoever's in government today might not be who's in government tomorrow. We want to work with people. We're here to hold the hands. We're here to lead. We're here to follow. We actually just want to GSD, get stuff done for the SDGs. So I think that it's more about our words. What are we saying? And are you being the best producer of verbal communication that's going to actually stimulate the evolution of how we see materials and resources? I think we should just abolish the word waste, to be honest.
Steve, what are your comments?
Yeah, 100% agree. It has to be the starting point. And, you know, there is a caveat that in doing so, there is a net environmental benefit and also a net economic benefit. But, you know, if I use this as an example, right? So we came up with this because we were solving a problem, because there's a heap of them sitting in the back of depots everywhere, and there was no easy way to recycle them, and eventually they were in holes in the ground. So when we started the process and we said, look, we're going to collect all the old bollards, we got absolutely flooded. We knew there was a problem to be solved. We didn't realise how big it was, and very quickly we needed a bigger boat. Like, there was just nowhere to put all this stuff, right? But all of a sudden, there's a value now to that. So in developing this product, it was a challenge for us, because as many of you in the room would know, you know, there's compliance requirements around colour, and when you start using recycled plastic content, there's real challenges. So we actually had to have a custom-made master batch to achieve the standards required for fluorescence and luminance. But then we thought, well, what else could we use that for? What other products could be used where maybe they don't have that complexity? So we started to we're looking at products 2 and 3, and we're now engaging with other suppliers who, excuse me, are in that room as well, where they're saying that they could use some of that material for telco pits and things like that. So all of a sudden, the old humble bollard that was sitting in the back of a depot that was going to end up in a hole in the ground is now going to new bollards, secondary products, and alternate market uses. And I think the other piece about circular economy, we're talking about in recycle here, obviously, but it's also about reusing and remanufacturing as well, and looking at the opportunities across those aspects of the circular model as well.
Great. Thanks, Steve. One of the sort of examples in the climate space that comes to mind when we talk about circular economy and producing benefits is, and this is a mind-blowing number, the number of people that die of air quality impacts from fossil fuel generation around the world per year is 10 million. 10 million people. the number of people that died of COVID to date is just under 7 million. And here's the mind-blowing bit. If we had put half of the money that we spent on COVID recovery into that particular air quality example, we'd been completely decarbonized the world by now and stop having 10 million people die every year. So these are sorts of, I guess, examples which I think as a society, as governments, communities, we just haven't sort of grasped and done something with. And I guess that's the discussion of the panel today. Joe, on that point of climate and carbon impacts, and there's two questions come through so far, guys. So unless your mobile phone said batteries are dead, punch in some questions. So one question which is going to the point of the environmental impact of redesigning and remanufacturing. So obviously collecting stuff and redoing it has an environmental impact, both from an embodied carbon point of view and an operational carbon perspective. Can you talk to some of the examples of this, especially with plastics and some of the system changes we need to consider in remanufacturing?
Yeah, well, I guess the way that's best to think about those things is life cycle assessment, or certainly it helps. So a common thing is to say, okay, so you take some, let's say, old aluminium, and you make new old aluminium cans, and you have to drive it around, you have to melt it down, whatever you have to do, and make new aluminium. How does that compare with making it from the virgin materials? And you can do comparisons across different material types, and almost inevitably recycling comes out better. With aluminium, the example I gave, massively better. All metals is really the strongest one. To be putting metals in landfill is really dumb, really. And I think we should have a bigger focus on metals in particular, just from that perspective. But same with paper and cardboard and glass, and also plastics. We did a life cycle assessment quite recently on carbon stories to do with plastic, looking to 2050, different scenarios of the management of plastic. So it comes out that on current basis, recycling is on average about half the emissions or the climate change emissions than virgin production. And as the future goes forward and we have a decarbonized economy, then that advantage increases because recycling is mostly, well, a lot of it's electricity, and if we've got lower emissions per unit electricity, obviously it's better, whereas the virgin stuff is a lot coming from gas, and natural gas has got enormous fugitive emissions of methane, which is, an urgent, the thing that does its warming in the next few decades rather than carbon dioxide, which does it over centuries. So it's a methane issue. So increasingly, recycling of plastic is going to look better. So yeah, that's an example, and I think that can be extrapolated across the board. Really, generally, recycling is better carbon-wise.
Great. No, that's a good thing to know. There's an interesting question that's come through around consumption, and I don't know how many of you have seen the latest Apple ad around sustainability and their own sustainability strategy, but it's a whole series of questions. There's a Hollywood actress, and there's a whole series of questions that she's come in as Mother Earth, and you should Google and have a look at it. It's quite good. And she's asking a whole bunch of questions of Tim Cook around carbon emissions, net zero targets of Apple, and so on. The one question that didn't get asked is, when are you going to stop making so much stuff, and when are you going to stop producing a new version of your phone every year? That question didn't get asked, which is point of this next question from the audience. Recycling isn't just about what the consumer does. How can we stop overproduction of products and drive less consumerism? Who wants to take that?
There's one really quick solution, is just don't buy the stuff. Now, I'm not anti-consumption, but you know, my phone has a crack, I'll get it repaired. My company sells recycled and upcycled technology devices. When you're next looking for a device, are you looking for secondhand products? Do you borrow clothes from your friends when there's a formal event on? Or do you go and buy something that hangs in your wardrobe for the next 10 years? Anyone that's my size can hit me up. I will loan out my clothes to anyone. Because we should actually consider a bit more of, I grew up, my grandparents raised me. Share the sugar, borrow the butter. Do you remember knocking on your neighbour's door, asking for some sugar and butter, and you don't go down to the shop to buy the kilo of sugar for a teaspoon? So COVID taught us a lot. I used to get a smack if I did the wrong thing, sent to my room back in the day when you could. My nan would always say, Yasmin, you can come out of your room when you've learnt your lesson. And you brought up COVID before. COVID locked us all in our rooms. Our nan smacked us, put us to our rooms. We all worked from home miraculously, and it was okay. Our kids were homeschooled and it was all okay. We all survived instantaneous overnight change. I don't understand, as an entrepreneur, why we could do that. Yet now we've come out of our rooms and we seem to all be doing the same bad behaviour that got us in our rooms in the first place. Why don't we just change our habits? I'm not saying, you know, stop manufacturing worldwide. I'm not saying destroy ecosystems where people are earning an income for a good day's work. But I am saying we could slow down in order to speed up.
It's a very good point. You know, if you look at buying cars, a lot of people think buying an EV is a great thing. My car's 23 years old, and if you look at the life cycle work around replacing a car, your old car's better than your EV, which is better than a brand new fossil or internal combustion engine car. So yeah, do your research as well. So here's a question for all of you, really, maybe quick, short bursts of answer, starting with Joe. Have you ever been so disheartened in your circular economy journey and wanted to give up? I mean, that could go to any sustainability person or climate person. What did you do to curb that, Joe?
Oh, well, look, I haven't actually. I think there's always positive things. There's always positive things going on. In fact, I don't think there's been a change. There's been a time working in the waste sector where I haven't had people come to me and say, this is a really exciting time to work in waste, isn't it? It is. There's lots going on. There's lots of challenges and there's lots of victories. So I haven't been disheartened.
Ditto, never. No. I think I'm not saying you don't have challenges, right? We've had enormous challenges, a lot of setbacks, a lot of frustrations, but you persevere. But if you just remind yourself again, production, consumption, waste does not make sense, and nor should it be the number one option when you can put in place circular models that deliver both a value proposition, so in terms of performance and conformance, that product does its job, but unlocks a whole range of other benefits and adds value. It's a no-brainer, right? Surely. Yeah. So my advice is if you're in that position and you're questioning because you are challenged, just remind yourself of that and say, well, what's the alternative? Because it's definitely not production, consumption, waste.
Okay, from my end a little, my greatest challenge has been convincing my family to embark on recycling. Like my sisters, my brothers. There's a saying that the prophet is not recognized in his own home. But then I'm working towards it. So that's the only platform I tend to ask myself some questions. But I look forward to making those changes internally.
And I'm going to buck the trend and actually, if you haven't already picked up on it, I'm pretty honest, open, authentic, vulnerable. Yes, I wanted to walk away in about November 2021. Someone wanted to buy my company. I thought it was a great deal. They really just wanted to buy me. And at the time when you're a founder, I didn't pay myself for 2.5 years. You're getting in the grunty stuff. It was a great offer. I said no because I felt like it was not going to go in the right direction. Then a week later, I had this surprise divorce land on my lap. 25-year marriage, boo, gone. And so for me, all I wanted to do was quit, go get a real job, get paid a lot of money, support my 2 children as a single mother, surprisingly, having to change a massive direction in my life after being the supporting working parent. And so I sat there for probably 3 or 4 days thinking about all the people I would have to ring to say it's done, like Officeworks, go find another supplier, let me introduce you to some people, all the other people that had invested in me over the years. And when I looked in the mirror and asked myself the truth of, do I really want to walk away? I thought, heck no, like I would be quitting because of one hard thing in my life I've done harder. You know, it was unexpected, but unexpected things have happened to us for decades. And if you walk away when something really hard and hurtful happens and your mission is bigger than you as a single person, then you can't walk away. And so for me, I didn't want to ring Officeworks and tell them that I was out and that I was giving up. And in a turn of events, as I started to then consider how to raise capital to scale the business, Officeworks wanted to invest. So I never had to make that phone call to not speak a truth, even though I was hurting in a personal, you know, tragedy moment of my own life. And I look back now and think, bring it on, you know. We've been doing it for a long time. It is really hard, but actually it's also super easy if you band together and get all the right people in the room and have moments like today where little seeds of possibilities have been planted so that we can start to regenerate our earth.
Thank you for being honest and giving us an authentic answer, Yaz, and well done on continuing and persevering. So one quick, I think we've got about 2 or 3 minutes to go. Quick question, Betty, see how you can weave this in. If we had one ask of Minister Plibersek, you know, in order to reach the 2030 target and other waste targets, what would it be? Joe?
Look, I would say the time is right to go hard on product stewardship. We've been hanging around it for a long time. There's some great triggers, the failure of the packaging targets to be met. There's just a bunch of them. The circular economy idea is in the community now. I think it's all political wins, and I think industry is ready, and I think she should go hard on that entire list that's on her priority list, do all of them.
Steve?
I think there's a bit of carrot and stick. I think what you're hearing and seeing at the moment is, you know, circular economy model is taking hold, but it's still very much grassroots driven. It's social enterprises, it's small organisations banding together, working together. But what we need to create that huge transformational shift is for the big players to get on board. So policy setting from government is one thing, tick, but there also has to be support and incentive provided by government to create, you know, you're talking about moving some pretty big ships. They've sunk capital, they've got to get returns on investment, they've got shareholders. There's a bit that can be done beyond policy, I think, in terms of incentivisation and support.
Great.
And I think from my end, it's about a retransformation of our mainstream media. Our media is influencing us more than we know. We have profit makers incentivizing these media people to change our mentality. And it took time for them to take us from that local practices to where we are today. It will take time to take us back to where we started from. Culture is very important. In Ghana, that is one major issue. Our forefathers were burning. Why tell us to change? It's a huge issue. And then lastly, I came across this figure that 90 billion tons of plastic waste is generated globally and only 9% is recycled. It says a lot. It means that globally we have a problem. So how do we solve it locally? That's my last words.
Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of things, social procurement and you know, actually changing systems to allow for smaller businesses to have a seat at the bigger tables. And I guess if I was to sum it up in a formula, I remember someone used to say to me, how did you get Officeworks as a customer, let alone an investor? Well, there's a simple formula, and it goes agility, us crazy founders, plus stability, the government and bigger enterprises like Wesfarmers and others. So agility plus stability equals capability. They can't do what they need to do without us. We can't do what we need to do without them. And it's about making room at the table for all the voices, not so we can fight it out and backstab each other, but so that we can actually all put whatever our truth is on the table so we can start to get things done a bit faster.
Thank you, Yaz. He has mentioned a couple of three-letter words I'm going to take away. GSD, get shit done.
Yes.
And SDGs. There's another three-letter word that everyone should think about, which is YES on the 14th of October. Three-letter words are better than two-letter words, being NO. So vote the right way and bring Indigenous knowledge into the circular economy concept and bring our First Nations people in. Thank you to our esteemed panelists, Joe, Steve, Betty, and Yas. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you very much to the panel. That was so inspiring and really, I mean, heartwarming to see so much passion here. And I guess we'll all be taking away a lot from that presentation and bringing in that global perspective. Because I guess, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, there is only the one planet that we all have to live on. So we do need to start to think about what does that bigger picture look like. And I think we've heard, you know, a lot of things that we could do and could take away at the local level. Those local actions are absolutely critical.